Number two, support the missionaries that God calls out of your church. I mean, this is not written for a medical conference. These things come out of my work with churches. But you know what we're doing in this country. We're giving, God calls someone to be a missionary, we give them some support, and we tell them, go and find the rest of it in a whole bunch of other places. But if God calls somebody out of your congregation, get behind that. If it's too much for your congregation, get another congregation to sidle up to you, and if necessary, get 3 or 4 or half a dozen. These are called consortiums, where 6 congregations go together to support missionaries, and if one missionary is accepted, all 6 of them join in. And that way that missionary doesn't have to run all over the country. So, missionary support. Invest in cross-cultural training for missionaries you support. You wouldn't send out a medical doctor who wasn't trained. Think about that for a moment. Supposing a man came to me and offered to do a thoracic operation of some kind on me. And he was a good man. His heart was in the right place. He was well-intentioned. He just didn't have any medical training. Well, if he operates on me, when he's finished, then my heart's probably not going to be in the right place, because he doesn't know what he's doing. How is it that we excuse missionaries from getting training, but medical people have to have it? Anyway, I suggest invest in cross-cultural training. I wish, for example, that I had known something about Africa before I went there, and I didn't. I came home from Africa at the end of the 1960s not understanding really how the animistic paradigm functioned. And that was awful. That was unacceptable. It should not have been that. Invest in mobilization efforts, especially where the gospel has been preached for many years. What is the rationale? What is the reason that I keep going back to East, Central, and Southern Africa, which I've been doing, every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. I've been going back to that part of the world where the gospel has been preached for 100 years or more. Some places 300 years. Why am I going there? Why am I not going to the 1040 window, where there are people who haven't heard the gospel even for the first time? Well, I'm going there because I believe the church in Africa is a huge sleeping giant that has the potential to do much more than it's now doing. And I'm like Dr. Winder used to say, if there's a fire and you have a bucket, you can get water and pour it on the fire. But if you knew that there were 100 sleeping firemen over here, your time would be better spent waking them up and getting them to use their buckets than just you using yours alone. I wish I could tell you some of the rewarding things that have happened as a result of my drawing attention to the missionary nature of the church with African churches. It's astounding. It's a message that has to be preached. Invest in ministries which do not have a natural constituency. You want to know what to do with your money? Radio broadcasting, ministries of mercy, Bible translation. But listen, I would caution here. Even in these, be careful not to do for people what they can and should do for themselves. If they are capable of running their own radio broadcasting, don't do it for them. Did you know Burkina Faso some years ago had 4 radio stations, 4 FM stations in the country, all fully supported from within the country? I understand now there are 8. So when I suggest these things, I also put out this caution: be careful not to do for people what they can and should do for themselves. Help refugees in a way that preserves dignity. I just don't have time to tell you stories of refugees who took collections among themselves to do God's work in a refugee camp. Invest in innovative preventive health projects which help to relieve the root causes of sickness and poverty. And here, get a hold of Dan Fountain's material and learn what can be done if you pay attention to that sort of thing. Invest in breaking the cycle of dependency, not in creating it. Invest in breaking it, like revolving loan funds, employment projects, and literacy projects, things that will help to resolve. I should have at the bottom of this screen exactly the same statement I had at the bottom of the last screen. Even here, be careful not to do for people what they can do for themselves. I want to tell you about a revolving loan fund scheme that just strikes me as quite unbelievable, given the paradigm that many of us have worked on over the years. Some young graduates of Messiah College went out to Zambia, prepared to introduce the idea of a village savings and loan. I don't know if any of you are involved in these things or not. They're using a new term now, SCA, Savings and Credit Associations. And these are not revolving loan funds where a lot of money is brought in from the United States and they're lending it out and helping people to become employed. No, they're not doing that at all. These young students from Messiah went into some very rural villages in Zambia. For 3 weeks, they taught the people how to have a savings and credit association. At the end of the 3 weeks, they said to them, how many of you in these villages would like to put some money into a fund which the members of the group can then borrow? And they put in 3.2 million Zambian kwacha, which was about $650 of their own money. They said they had learned in the 3 weeks how to manage that money, how to lend it out, and even to pay interest on it, although they never used the word, they never used terms like percentage of interest and so on like that. They said if you borrow 10, you must pay back 12. Very simple, because that's the level at which it was understandable by those villagers. So now they have this $3.2 million, $650 in the fund. By the end of the first year, that had grown to $1,700 worth of local money that was put in, and they had earned some interest, and the total was like $2,300 at the end of the first year. Where did the money come from? It wasn't somebody starting a micro savings, micro lending program from overseas. It was the people putting in their own money. Well, other villagers came and said, oh, by the way, the students from Messiah College only stayed 3 weeks. They were gone then. So the thing was up and running, and they were able to manage it while these students were gone. But after a while, other villagers heard about it and came and said, I want to join. And the first villager said, no, you can't join ours, but you can start your own. And if you want to start your own, we are willing to come and teach you how to start your own. Look at this. We're talking about resources that are within arm's reach. I must tell you a story about unemployment. I did a seminar in Maputo, Mozambique. And a young man stood up and said, let me tell you my story. He said, we live in a rural area. We have so many unemployed people. We didn't know what to do, so we started a prayer meeting for the unemployed. I never heard the United States government announce that the solution to high unemployment is to start a prayer meeting. But that's what this pastor and his people decided to do. He said they began to pray Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And he said soon so many people were employed and producing things that we had things we couldn't take to market. Too much. We didn't know we didn't know what to do. So we called the church together. And we told the congregation the problem we were having. You know that we have been praying for the unemployed. Now they are busy and things are being produced, but we don't know what to do to get the things to market. Some of the men in the church said, wait a minute, we have big trucks. We go into Maputo every week but to get things to bring out to the rural shops. But we go in empty. We will take these things from the villages, we will take them to Maputo. Here you had people get down on their knees, ask God for a solution to the problem, which incidentally was within arm's reach. They became productive, but not only that, God provided the way to get the things to the market. Don't underestimate what can happen when there is spiritual transformation. In fact, that's what this is all about. I'm not just talking about increasing the economic standard that people live on, because you know what happens. Without spiritual transformation, increasing the standard of living means you have wealthier pagans than you had before. And if you want to know what wealthier pagans can do, look at the crime families in places like New York. There's no shortage of money, but look at how rampant the evil is. So spiritual transformation is the secret, is the objective. Anyway, be careful about helping where the church exists and should be standing on its own 2 feet. I'm about the last slide here, 1 or 2 minutes. Outreach in one's own community should not be ignored in favor of more attractive projects at a distance, which often have greater appeal. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You can more easily get a short-term team to go to Guatemala or Costa Rica than into the inner city of Philadelphia, where they could go every week and learn language and develop a relationship. Be wary of spending huge amounts on short-term trips when cross-cultural experiences are available close at home. And 12, invest in medical professionals who can help a long-term medical missionary rather than sending non-professionals who add to the workload. That's all, folks. I'm finished. Let me show you something about a short-term trip. You will find this humorous, but unfortunately it's true. This was in a church bulletin. Our congregation is sponsoring a women's-only mission trip to beautiful Guadalajara, Mexico. We'll spend the week of June 11 to 18 in Guadalajara, also known as the shopping capital of Mexico, where we will have the incredible opportunity to minister to, pray for, and teach women in a vibrant church community. And this trip isn't a rough roach in your bed kind of experience either. We'll be housed in nice clean hotel rooms, eat lots of salsa, and have plenty of time to shop. Our hope is to take at least 15 women, including teenage daughters, on this Mexican ministry outreach. We trust that God will expand our hearts for Him as He expands our ministry to the women of Guadalajara. If you're remotely interested in this Great Commission adventure, or if you're just in the mood for Mexico after all this winter weather, call for more details about this fantastic outreach opportunity. Now you see why I call attention to the issue of motivation.